Everybody, welcome to the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. Dan Labbe, Mary Kay Cabot, Ashley Bastock. We're recording this here on Thursday. It's about 3:15, and we are still, of course, talking about OTAs. We were out there on Wednesday for our first OTA practice. Out there again next week for another one, then mini camp. So still a lot of practices to watch. And we're just going to start with the Twitter graphic that is sweeping the football world here over the last 24 hours or so. And that is a graphic that was tweeted out by ESPN Cleveland, and it showed stats from quarterback stats from Wednesday's practice. And the thing took on a life of its own. It went from kind of a, however you want to view it, a cute, fun sort of, haha, look, they're keeping stats and OTAs, to everybody's picking up on this and everybody's talking about it. And it's showing up on national TV shows, and people, we're seeing major media outlets tweet it and put it on their socials and all of that. Mary Kay, it took on a life of its own. And of course it did this in part because, as we've talked about, the outsized fame of Shedeurr Sanders based on what his current role on the team is always going to get people talking, and it's always going to get people paying attention. And honestly, if he weren't a part of this quarterback battle, I don't know how many people would even be paying attention to it outside of Cleveland. But because a graphic goes out that says Shedeurr Sanders went 7 for 9 and threw 3 touchdowns on Wednesday, it gets traction. This is the celebrity. This is the world of Shedeurr Sanders. So again, this feels like something that it's not his fault. He didn't do anything wrong. He just showed up and practiced. But the rest of the world has run with these OTA stats. So listen, Bill Nunn Jr. award winner, you have seen everything. Have you ever seen anything like this?
Well, I've seen a lot of crazy things, including Johnny Manziel showing up on the doorstep, right? I mean, and then Baker Mayfield showing up on the doorstep. So the Shedeurr Sanders experience sort of rivals those two guys just in terms of the cult following and their rabid, passionate fan base and things like that. So I have seen things kind of like this, but I do think that we just have to be so careful about putting out stats like this without the proper context to them. Okay, yes, I'm sure those numbers are correct, but you definitely have to take into account what the situation is for these guys. And I think that's important to note. Shedeurr Sanders, as we so aptly told everybody yesterday, did not take 1 rep in 11 on 11s. The Browns are making him earn it. He has to come in here as the 4th string quarterback and work his way up that depth chart. So he did not take a team rep. He did not have Mason Graham, in his face yesterday at all. He didn't have anybody in his face because they did not have defensive linemen on the field or offensive linemen on the field when he was out there practicing. And 7-on-7s are a whole different ball game. You can be an absolute star in 7-on-7s, but it has to translate over to, first of all, 11-on-11s in practice, and then a preseason game, and then a real game. So we haven't seen really any of the true Shedeurr Sanders experience yet. I will say, you do want them to look great in 7-on-7s. It's a good building block. It's what you want to see. Absolutely 100%. And I'm happy for him. And anybody that thinks that I'm against Shedeurr Sanders, well, then they were not listening to this podcast for how many ever months, right? When I was saying over and over and over again, just take him at number 2. Just take him at number 2. So I am not anti-Shedeurr Sanders, but I am all about getting the facts right, getting the facts straight. And right now, a graphic like this, although it's fun and it gets a lot of clicks and a lot of attention, it's just not really exactly what's going on out there at practice right now.
Yeah, and I don't have a problem. Like, if fans want to have fun with this, I mean, look, it's football. It's a quarterback battle. It's something to talk about right now. Like, if fans want to have fun with this stuff, I don't care. Like, if people on Twitter want to make jokes or mess around with it and, do whatever they do, that's fine. It's just when it starts to get legitimized outside of that world by people who should know better. on national shows and things like that. People who should know that, like, completing a pass when you have 3-4 seconds to stand there with no pass rush, and then you can kind of jog out to the right and stand there again for another 3 or 4 seconds with no one chasing after you, is a little different than doing it on a Sunday. So those stats, Ashley, are just, they're going to be skewed because this, personally, there was one year where I was assigned to keep stats during a quarterback battle. I think it was the Hoyer. Was it the Hoyer Manziel? Maybe it was the McCown year. I don't remember. And I think I did it for like a week and got tired of it and wiggled my way out of it. But even then, I kind of had a personal rule that I'm only doing 11 on 11 stats. I'm not doing any 7 on 7 stats. I just think it is important to just remember 7 on 7 is not real football. It's not close to real football. They're just working on things. They're just trying to give these quarterbacks and these receivers an opportunity to work on some things without a pass rush, without a defense bearing down on them. And those numbers are going to be inflated and look better when it's 7 on 7 versus 11 on 11.
Yeah, there's just no real context to those numbers either in that graphic, right? Because, like, basically what you're saying, Dan, one guy, Shedeurr, was not in 11 on 11s at all. The other guy's numbers, I would assume, but I don't know for sure, include their 11 on 11 numbers. Like, it's something that's not really, at the end of the day, verifiable. And, like, data-wise, you're using different data points for all 4 different people. And that doesn't tell you anything. And again, like, if people want to have fun, by all means, I'm not the fun police in this, but when we're trying to, or when outside people and fans are trying to make legitimate conclusions about these quarterbacks off of this, you don't even have all the information. And I think, like, the thing is, a lot of people don't even realize they don't have all that information. They don't understand all that context that is missing, unfortunately. So you look at the graphic, if you're just a fan who got done working, and you're like, oh, Shedeurr completed 7 of 9 passes and threw 3 touchdowns. He must have had a pretty good day. But you don't know that he wasn't in those 11 on 11 periods and that those other guys all were. And again, it's not about who we want. And like Mary Kay, like, I was obviously so vocal about they should draft Shedeurr. And even as he kept falling, I'm like, why don't you just take a chance on that guy, particularly before they got Dillon Gabriel? And it's not, like, about that. It's just about, like, no matter what, we talked about this yesterday, no matter what Kevin Stefanski says not to read into reps, that is the thing, like, everyone should be taking some stock in right now. Of course he's going to say that because he doesn't want us to, because they don't want to give any indication of where they are. But when you talk about knowing what you know, what do you know for sure? We know for sure the order that guys took reps. We knew for sure who was in 11 on 11s. And that's what tells us something, not these numbers that don't have the full context surrounding them right now.
Yeah, and so I want to go back to something we've all kind of said here. This, when we talk about this graphic and we talk about these stats, this isn't some, like, man, Shedeurr stinks, what are they doing? I mean, I've liked what I've seen out of Shedeurr when we've gotten a chance to watch him. I liked what I saw in rookie minicamp. I've been spending a little time catching up. I didn't get to see all of his throws yesterday, but I did check out some of the videos of those, the red zone area where he kind of racked up those touchdowns. So I got caught up on a little bit of that. And like you both said, I mean, go back and just listen to all the months of podcasts we did leading up to the draft, whether it was the 3 of us, whether it was me and Tim and Lance. We were all very complimentary of Shedeurr Sanders and thought he was a very talented quarterback who could run Kevin Stefanski's offense. Now, when a guy falls to the 5th round like he did, that's going to change your perspective a little bit. It has to, because that the NFL is telling you something. Maybe they're wrong, but I'm still sitting here on May 29th, and I still, like Mary Kay, Shedeurr Sanders is the most interesting of these 4 quarterbacks to me. That doesn't mean that he's going to be the best of the 4 or that he should win the job or be QB1 right now. But he's the one that I'm still kind of just most interested in, because throughout the draft process, he was the one that I really liked what I saw out of him. I liked Cam Ward the best of all these draft guys. And Shedeurr was kind of in that next tier for me, at least with this group. And of the 4 that are in Browns camp right now, he's the one that I'm most intrigued by, but I'm not going to also get caught up in 7-on-7 stats. I'm not going to do it for him. I didn't do it for, I don't think I've done it for any other quarterbacks. I usually don't sit there and even keep stats in my head when I'm watching these practices. It's all eyeball test over here for me. But I just think it is important that people understand we're not doing this to rip on Shedeurr. We're just kind of trying to frame what we saw versus kind of what's being put out there nationally.
Right. And I think it needs to be put into proper perspective. And I really believe, I know that we can do that. We can put it into its proper perspective. And the reason why that's so vitally important right now is because Shedeurr, it moves the needle. And Shedeurr is someone who the whole entire national media is trained upon and focused on, and they are hanging on every word, every tweet, every clip about Shedeurr, and they are forming their opinions about what should happen in this quarterback competition based on what people with boots on the ground are putting out there. And that's why I think we have to treat it with the utmost care, and we have to be careful, and we have to be fair about what we are disseminating. I just think it's vitally important. In addition to that, in addition to the national media just clinging to everything that we're seeing or doing here, is the fact that there is a whole Sanders nation, and God love them. I love passionate fans, and they are passionate about Shedeurr, and that is great. Once again, we've been through this before. We've been through the Johnny Manziel mania and the Baker Bros and all of that. We know what it's like to deal with a passionate fan base, and that's tremendous. That's absolutely wonderful. But the fan base deserves also to know what's going on here. And that's why I haven't been afraid to tell the truth of what's going on in the quarterback competition. Not that Shedeurr is not performing well in it, but I'm trying to tell the story of where he stands in it right now. And where he heads into the quarterback competition is in 4th place. He's QB4 right now. That's where he is. And he can jump out of that on any given day. And he can climb up that depth chart any week or whatever the case may be. But that's where he is starting out. And he didn't take any first team or 11 on 11 reps offense versus defense yesterday. And I thought that was somewhat significant. They are making him earn it. They are showing him, look, here's where you are right now, and here's where you need to go. And he needs to climb up over the other 3 quarterbacks if he wants to win the starting job. And he's off to a great start. In rookie minicamp, he did a great job. And on the first day of OTAs, he did a great job in his 7-on-7s. And as we go along, we're going to see how he does in more of the 11-on-11s. And then in training camp, we're really going to get a very good idea of how he is handling pressure and how he's assimilating the offense and how he's doing when he has Myles Garrett bearing down on him and things of that nature. And we're going to get to see him practice twice against the Philadelphia Eagles and play against the Philadelphia Eagles, the Super Bowl defending champion Philadelphia Eagles. And we're going to get to see him practice against the Carolina Panthers and play against the Panthers and also against the Rams in preseason. And by the time it's all said and done, we're going to know where he stands and how he has picked everything up and how he has handled this competition. But that's not how it's starting. And people need to understand the truth. It's not Shedeurr bashing. It's not. It's being portrayed like that in some circles. That's not what it is. People deserve to know the truth.
And I think, too, just to add more context is, look, there's a ton right now that we're not seeing. When we're out there in training camp, we're going to at least be watching practice every single day. So we're going to see every practice in full. That's when training camp starts. You guys might not be able to see a bunch of clips because they kind of restrict what we can shoot. So I don't know, maybe that'll be good for us. But we've seen one practice. By the time you're listening to this podcast, they'll have had 3 OTA practices. By the time we watch another practice, they'll have had a 4th OTA practice. And again, we'll have only seen one when we show up there next Wednesday. Maybe they'll even, I don't know, maybe they have 4 this week. I know one of the weeks they have 4. So the point is they're practicing a lot of times when we're not out there. So who knows? Maybe Shedeurr was taking 11 on 11 reps today, but we haven't seen any clips from the Browns, and obviously we weren't out there. We're also not in those meeting rooms. We're not in all the other spaces where this battle is happening that we're not seeing. When they're meeting with the coaches, when they're watching tape, whatever they're doing behind the scenes, we're not witnessing that. So Ashley, I think that's an important part of this context that, again, like I said, have fun with it. Go on Reddit, go on Twitter, have fun with the stat tracker. But just remember, it's such a small picture, especially right now, of everything that's going on in this competition. It's literally what happened over, was it even 90 minutes? Over like a 90-minute span in what has been a weeks-long competition to this point.
Yeah, it wasn't even 90 minutes yesterday. I think they only practiced for about 70 or so. Like, it was a fairly short practice. And again, no team reps. And I think, like, to your point, yes, we don't see everything going on during these because not all of them are open. But, like, even from what we have seen, I don't think that it's even necessarily like a bad thing for Shedeurr to be eased into this a little bit, right? Like, he's coming in with different expectations, but I'm sure you guys saw it too. Like, even when he wasn't in drills, I saw Bill Musgrave talking to him quite a bit, and those two walking through things on the sideline, his quarterback's coach. So, like, I think easing him into things and not throwing him right into the fire in terms of like, hey, we're going to be getting you first team reps right away in 11 on 11s. Like, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. And like, truthfully, yes, Dylan Gabriel got some, but Kenny Pickett and Joe Flacco still got the most. And I think that makes sense, sort of. Like, you want to let these guys get their footing, get their bearings, and connect with some of these pass catchers. And they did both, I think, get chances to do that yesterday. Yes, eventually I think we should see Shedeurr in some of those team drills. That will be important. I still think it means something that he was kind of last in the pecking order, but I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing for him right now, just given where he's at in his career compared to everybody else.
Okay, let's talk OTA attendance here. Something we didn't get a chance to get into a ton on what day were we out there? Wednesday. A ton on Wednesday. It's Thursday. I've lost complete track of all days here in this off-season program. So let's talk attendance here. I know for some of you, this is a topic you hate. For some of you, it's a topic you love. I got asked about it in a radio interview yesterday. I know people have been talking a lot about Myles Garrett, who it was in Tokyo, so he was obviously not at OTAs. I'm sort of at the point, Mary Kay, with Myles. I mean, I feel like we talk about this every year, and he's not there. Sometimes he kind of rolls in and out. I think I know he was in the facility at points during the offseason program. I know he put some things up on Instagram of him in the facility. I think the Browns tweeted out some of him doing some lifting, but obviously not there for practice. I could make the case that, look, for Myles, what good does it show? What does it do for him to show up and run through bags, and do all the stuff that these defensive linemen are doing? The counterpoint to that is maybe there's a leadership element to it of, hey, I'm going to set a tone and I'm going to show up even if I don't have to. I find it a little more disconcerting that David Njoku wasn't there, honestly. This is a guy that has generally also, like Myles, skipped the offseason program, but they're putting in a new offense once again. He's going to be a really big part of it because this is going to be kind of that tight end heavy Kevin Stefanski style offense. This is a passing camp. So I'm a little more, I guess I'm a little more put out that David wasn't there. But I also understand, I mean, like I said, when I did that radio interview yesterday, it doesn't bother me that much that Myles wasn't there, but I can understand why fans might be a little irked by it after he signed that contract. And the Haslam's talked about wanting him to be more of a leader.
Well, let me start out with Myles Garrett. First of all, when you saw photos of him at the Browns facility, he was not actually participating in the Browns offseason program. He was in town for Cavs playoffs, and he can drop into the facility and do some of his own thing with some of his own people that he works with, his own physical therapist and trainers and stuff like that. But he wasn't participating in the off-season program per se. So there is a little bit of a distinction there. But having said that, Miles has really, truthfully, whether we like it or not, a little bit of a different set of rules than everybody else. And he has kind of earned that by being the best defensive player in the NFL, by earning NFL Defensive Player of the Year honors in 2023, by being on the road to the Hall of Fame, and by getting himself ready every single year to go out there and dominate once he gets into the season. And also, on top of that, everyone knows that OTAs are really not well suited and designed for offensive linemen and defensive linemen. It's much better for the 7-on-7 crowd than it is for the 11-on-11 crowd. And I'm sure that he feels that his time is much better spent by working his own program on his own, showing up in great shape and healthy and ready to go. So I don't have a huge, huge problem with it. I get it now. And I use this example on the radio this morning myself. I was once told that I heard somewhere that Bill Belichick was once asking Bill Parcells about, hey, LT's late for this meeting. What do I do? Should I start the meeting? And it was kind of like Bill Parcells gave him the message that it's LT. Start the meeting. He'll show up when he gets there, right? And when you have a player who dominates the competition and could ultimately be the reason why you win a Super Bowl, the rules can be a little different for that player. And we've seen it happen before. We've seen it happen with Odell Beckham Jr. There are certain players where it's not like all the rest. It's a little bit different. And that's how it is for Miles. And I don't have an enormous problem with it.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. Again, maybe we're just used to it at this point with Miles. But Ashley, look, whether he shows up in the spring or not, we know this: he's going to show up next season and look like no other human being we've ever seen when he's standing at that podium shirtless, and he's going to get 15, 16 sacks, create a bunch of pressure, and be a finalist for Defensive Player of the Year again. Like you could just write all of that in pen for Myles Garrett, whether he shows up in the spring or not.
Yeah, I think whether he's there in OTAs or for any of the voluntary portion of the offseason, it's not going to impact what he does on the field. I guess where I waffle in terms of, like, I don't even want to say, does it bother me or, like, does it get me riled up, I guess? It is just because of, like, the intangible things, right? Like, I think that's the only reason to question it for me, or, like, why I question it, because obviously, like, we've all praised Denzel Ward for being here, right? And it's a little bit different for a cornerback. We've talked about it. It is a passing camp, right? I do think the corners actually get quite a bit of good, solid work done, particularly in the team drills. But Miles is a leader of the defense and a face of the team. Like, I think it's always good and always beneficial when those guys show up. It becomes like a net positive. You're talking about something that's a net positive to me versus like a net neutral. Like, so him not being there maybe doesn't impact him negatively or anybody else, but I think him being there would benefit particularly some of these younger defensive linemen. And this line looks a lot different too. I think there are still things they could do. I think it would be really good for Mason Graham. Obviously, they play a different position, but that would be good. Isaiah McGuire is still young. Alex Wright is still young, coming back from an injury. Miles is the leader of that unit. The D-line is the engine of Jim Schwartz's defense, and Miles is the engine of the D-line. So I think in that way, for me, when I question it or come off a little bit hard on him for not being there, it's really that. Like, there's not a football reason. It's all these intangible reasons and like leadership reasons. And like, it's fine. Like, Miles doesn't have to be a vocal rah-rah kind of leader. He's never been that. I don't think he needs to be that. But I think like still showing up for things like this as much as you can even though it's not going to make or break your own individual production. I think I like the tone it sets, and we've talked about this before. Like sometimes with this team, in years where they haven't had good attendance, and I think attendance was pretty good, like quite honestly, yesterday. So this doesn't really necessarily apply to this year. But this idea of sometimes like you're like, are they a little too comfortable? Like, especially considering you had 3 wins last year. That's kind of a tough pill to swallow. So from that perspective, I hope we get to see him a little bit. I mean, mini camps in a couple weeks at this rate anyway, but I do think his presence could be beneficial in that way if he does come to any of these voluntary sessions.
They got to figure this thing out. I know that this off-season program has been a topic going back to after COVID, and JC Treader was really big about changing it, and I think there's a lot of good examples on the Browns of this program. Like, yes, it's voluntary, and no, they can't compel anyone to be there, but said Tillman, you better be there, right? If you're one of these 4 quarterbacks, you better be there because you got to get these reps. If you're Isaiah McGuire and Alex Wright, like you probably should be there. It's Deontay Johnson was not there yesterday. We talked about that on the pod, and we can talk about that a little more. We talked about that yesterday. This is a situation where, unless there was some other reason that we don't know about that he wasn't there, he should probably be there taking those reps, right? So I don't know. I think like they just need to come up with a solution. Maybe they just need to do like a 4-week mandatory program or like a 3-week mandatory program or something like that instead of the way they're doing it now. But that's a whole other pod, because Mary Kay, it is voluntary, as Kevin likes to say over and over again. But like you were kind of getting at there with the LT rule, the Myles Garrett rule, there are classes to this. It's really only voluntary for certain guys. And there are other guys, when they don't show up, you're kind of like, buddy, you should probably be here.
Well, there have been initiatives underway or proposed to change this up. Most recently, they were talking about just starting everything in June and having it mandatory and go all the way through, which of course we freaked out a little bit about that because we like our little summer break there between mini camp and training camp at the end of July. But that was one of the things that was on the table, to let these guys have their whatever 3, 4, 5, 4 months or whatever off after the season, and then just have to come back on a mandatory basis in June. I don't know whatever happened to that. I don't love that idea, but I do think that this does lend itself to just some interpretation. It really does. It lends itself to some interpretation because you really aren't allowed to be annoyed with Myles Garrett or Deontay Johnson or whoever else decides not to show up. So it is a little awkward, is a little weird, but most guys that need to be here actually do show up. In the case of Deontay Johnson, we did talk about this a little bit yesterday. As you mentioned, it bears repeating that I think we all agree that if there was any way he could be here, he should be here. This is a passing camp. This is a quarterback competition that's going on. You want to develop camaraderie and chemistry with the quarterback. You want to show what you can do. There's all kinds of quarterback and receiver drills going on. This is the perfect time to get out there and to showcase your skills. So if he didn't have a good excuse, I think that he could probably make some better decisions in regards to the offseason program.
Yeah, and I think he's a great example of this, just because, for whatever reason he wasn't there. Because he wasn't there, that meant, Jamari Thrash has taken some of those reps that could have gone to him. And now Jamari had some issues yesterday with some drops and things like that. But, if Jamari puts together some good days, that helps him. And that, while it's not supposed to hurt a player to miss those practices, if somebody else is taking those reps and impressing, it's just going to hurt. It's just going to hurt you in the long run anyway. Again, at running back, let's say Jerome Ford wouldn't have shown up. Now, Jerome was there, but let's say he wouldn't have shown up, and now Quinshawn and Dylan Sant, like all those guys are getting those reps instead of him. It just opens the door for someone to potentially come in and take your job. Myles Garrett doesn't have to worry about that. David Njoku doesn't have to worry about that. But Ashley, that's why it is important for some of these guys that if they are able, they should be there, because by you not being there, it opens the door for other players to take reps that should have been yours and make an impression that you could have been making. I feel like I'm talking to like one of my kids here about like, well, this is why you have
I
to go to
feel like,
voluntary practices and,
yeah, you're
all
just
of
like
that.
explaining the term Wally pipped. Like that's what you're explaining here. I feel like I'm one of the kids that you're explaining that to. But no, like I was gonna even say, like that's a perfect example, right? Because like most people, obviously we're not NFL players, but you probably played youth sports, and I mean I remember playing basketball and volleyball, and yeah, summer open gyms are not mandatory. You do not have to be there, but like I was at every single one, right? And I think you know in that instance you have to go. Like it's just the reality, and it's I think that's the important point to make, Dan, is like yeah, they might not be allowed to hold it against you, but hypothetically, if you're not there and somebody else is, and that person looks real good, and they get better and better each practice out there, and suddenly the coaches haven't seen you in a while, and suddenly they're liking what another guy can do, then yeah, that like could unintentionally create a position battle, or like worst case scenario, you lose your spot in the rotation or your spot as a starter because somebody has just like managed to outwork you in that way in a setting where it really mattered. So yeah, I think obviously they can't intentionally knock somebody for not coming. And like we said, some of these guys who didn't come, like their jobs are safe regardless. But I think there are a lot of people that's not the case. I actually think there should be, we've talked about it, like more position battles this offseason and training camp because of what the record was last year. So that's why I think it's really important to be there ultimately.
Okay, we're gonna wrap up the pod here. We're gonna embarrass Mary Kay real quick. I mentioned this off the top. Mary Kay, of course, is the PFWA's winner of the Bill Nunn Jr. Award. It is a major award. She's going to be honored by the Pro Football Hall of Fame in Canton. This is a big deal, this award. Mary Kay, this was what going for it for the fourth time and got it this year. Should have gotten it before this year, but that's okay. You win the award, so congratulations on that. And so Ashley and I were going to say nice things about you now. This is the only time we're going to do it. But I guess just like it struck me today, like I've been working with you like on the Browns beat for 10 years, which is crazy. This is my 10th year on the beat with you. And I always tell people, because when you first get in that room with you, it's like, oh my God, I got to keep up with Mary Kay. Like she's doing all these things. I probably have even told Ashley this. I know I've told like Chris Easterling this, that like you just can't. You cannot keep up with Mary Kay. You can try, but you can't do it. But it's been awesome to watch you work over these 10 years. I've gotten to know you. You've gotten pretty close over these 10 years. I mean, my son is graduating tonight, which is crazy to like, it's like you've known Ethan, even though you've never met him for these 10 years. So it's been really like, it's been an honor to work with you. It's been great to get to know you as a person, your cats, your kids, all of that stuff. So congratulations. And like I said in my tweet, thanks for putting up with me being a little grumpy sometimes when I show up and maybe don't want to be there or don't want to talk to anybody or just want to be a wet blanket. You've learned to deal with all of my little quirks and intricacies. So it's been awesome. And I hope we get 10 more years together.
Oh, I definitely hope we get at least 10 more years together. And it's been amazing working with you over these 10 years. And again, watching your kids grow up and all of that. And I can't believe that your son is graduating from high school tonight. But, I've watched you grow in those 10 years and really develop into an amazing journalist. And you're so good at everything that you do. And I just think we are so lucky to have you. And all three of us have had so much fun together on these podcasts. And, I just wouldn't be here without you guys. You guys are amazing and you make the job fun and you make the job easy. And I'm in awe of you guys in terms of your ability and your talent and just everything that you bring to the table. So I'm the one that finds myself being honored to work with you. So thank you.
And then
I'm
Ashley,
you
came
cry.
in. Yeah, right. You came in a little later, but I didn't prepare you for this. So
No.
have at it.
No, I'm going to try not to cry. Mary Kay is a very, very dear friend on top of us being coworkers. I know, like, some people you probably aren't as lucky as we are to genuinely, like, all be friends and like each other, and it makes, like, doing this job so much easier. And like Dan said, I mean, we know how hard you work, number one. And it is, like, I'm type A, you're, like, type
Well, thank you so very much. That means so much to me. And to see you grow and blossom in this job. And like I said, the most gratifying thing to me about this whole thing is that I do feel like over all of these years, I feel like I have been able to blaze that trail and to pave the way for young women to enter this business and to do it at the highest levels and to be aggressive and to not be afraid. And I feel like I've watched so many women come into the business since I first started. And now everyone, it seems like, can be themselves. Back in the day, you kind of had to try to fit in, and you didn't necessarily dress the way you might have wanted to. Now Dan knows full well. Ashley and I sit in the media room putting on our makeup
There was
for our videos.
there was a curling iron that came out of nowhere yesterday.
There was Mary Kay's curling iron that I borrowed, so that's the level we're talking about, that we plugged into our the power strip that Dan and I share, actually.
Yes, and we have a lot of laughs about that kind of stuff, a ton of laughs about what poor Dan did to deserve us. But I do really feel like, there are so many women in this business now, and some of the things that I had to deal with early on in my career that I've never really talked about. I've never written about it. I've never done a book about it like people always ask me to do. But, I feel like I took a lot of arrows so that other women could come into this business and not have to take those arrows and not have to kick down doors and not have to suffer some of the things that we had to, trying to navigate locker rooms back in the early days. And it's really great to see everything that's happening now. And I'm just grateful for all of that. And especially just having an opportunity to work with you too, because you're fabulous.
And I'll just say this: one of the things that I like, I don't think you can understand how Mary Kay does the job unless you're watching it every day. So I don't even think our listeners and our texters and all those people who certainly appreciate the work you do understand it. But I'm just thinking back to a day last year where it was just a nothing day, and it was like, what is happening with this football team? It's boring. There's nothing going on, and out of nowhere, you got Myles Garrett to talk about TJ Watt not being, I forget what it was, like not apologizing for what happened at the Defensive Player of the Year. It's just moments like that where it's like, oh, Mary Kay found the story today on a day when there was just when there was nothing. It was a nothing day. There was nothing to write about. We were all like, what are we going to give people to talk about this football team with? It's just moments like that. The Jadeveon Clowney stuff, all of that, the professional stuff. And then like Ashley was saying, we all get along great. Like you don't work as closely with people. Like we are together all the time. In the fall, I talk to the two of you more than I talk to anyone in my family. So like, and even at times in the off season. So, cause my family doesn't talk to me very much, but that's beside the point. But you can't do this job together like we have for, what is it? Is it 5 years now that Ashley's been around too? So yeah, you can't do this job together. Yeah. Like we do if we didn't all get along and weren't all friends as well. So congratulations, Mary Kay. We're really happy for you.
Thank you guys so much. I really, really appreciate it. And those words mean so much to me coming from you guys, because I know that you live it right here with me side by side, and you know what all goes into this and what we all have to deal with every day. So thank you very much.
All right. Well, that will do it for this edition of the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. Our YouTube is Cleveland Browns on cleveland.com. Our Instagram is Orange and Brown Talk. Our Twitter is Orange Brown Talk. And of course, if you're not a Football Insider subscriber, cleveland.com/Browns, the blue banner at the top of the page to get involved with that. For Mary Kay and Ashley, Hall of Famer Mary Kay. Like, I know you're a Hall of Famer in other areas too, but this is the big one. Hall of Famer Mary Kay. I'm Dan.
Wow.
Thanks for listening, everybody.